This is a financial war that the United States is waging against everybody.
We'll see whether or not we can balance out our budget.
A trade war is in nobody's interest, in my view.
I consider the US president's latest tariff decisions to be fundamentally wrong. The entire global economy will suffer from these ill-considered decisions. Companies and consumers all over the world, including in the USA.
Well, they can do that, but nothing's going to change the size of our economy. You're not going to get Madagascar, which is doing, I think, 78% tariffs to really frighten the United States because Madagascar, whatever they make there, they want to import it to the United States. It is a good question. What do they make in Madagascar? But whatever it might be, they're not going to be able to compete because they want to have access to all of the people in the United States to be able to buy their product. So it's not going to be a fair fight. And when you look at China, that's a different story, because there is, the size of the economies are pretty, consistent with each other. But the United States has a much more diverse economy than China does. So I think the United States is going to win that war. But the question is, are they going to escalate, the tariffs up to, 60, 70%? And, that's a big question mark there. But in lieu of a kinetic war, this is a financial war that the United States is waging against everybody. It depends if you have a short-term view or a long-term view. And the United States usually has a quarter-by-quarter view because of earnings of companies. But if you take the longer-term perspective, this is brilliant. You're taking the greatest weapon that the United States has, which is their economy, and using it to leverage better deals with other countries, which we have been taking advantage of for the last 50, 60 years. So it just took somebody who had a long-term mindset to come about and do this correctly, which is what Trump is doing. Well, he's taken it to undo the trade deficit that we have, but also, he's a competitor and he looks at something that's unfair and he goes after it and tries to remedy it. And this is something, especially with the cars, that is dramatic. I mean, when you look at how much Japan charges for United States cars to come into Japan versus what we were charging for Japanese cars to come into the United States, it was dramatically different. And to make things more fair, and that's what Trump's all about, is the fairness, these are steps that just needed to be taken. You have to remember, he's a real estate person. It doesn't make him an economist, but everybody seems to think that because he's a businessman and there hasn't been business people in the Oval Office, that he is somehow, better skilled at this. I think it's more an innate process that he has inside him to compete. And that's what he's doing. But, tariffs are not something that he grew up knowing. He just knew that there was unfair trade, that the Chinese, the Japanese, the Europeans were taking advantage of the United States with the tariffs. And that's always bothered him. You can go back to the 70s and watch videos of him talking about this. So this is not something that's brand new, but it doesn't come from his real estate background. Well, the Chinese for years have been stealing our IP and making things cheaper, just like they were making steel cheaper. And the tendency is to go after China because we import so much from China, and Chinese, are importing some from us, but not as much from us as we would hope to be able to get into their markets. So that's why we've raised our tariffs on their goods. And there's so many different particulars there. The technology is one of the things that China has really taken advantage of the United States on. And again, this is a great way for us to position ourselves, especially when the Chinese economy is rather weak. This is a good time to be doing this. Any parts that come from Canada to the United States for cars are being hit with 25% tariffs. So that's going to be kind of dicey on how they itemize the parts from Canada that go into U.S. cars. That's yet to be seen. So there's still a lot to be figured out here. We're just in day one of Liberation Day. And I think that there's a lot of fallout that's going to happen and a lot of renegotiations that are going to occur. Just how universal it's been, the taking advantage of the United States. There's not one country out there where we have a higher tariff on them than they do on us. And even UK is going to be feeling this. But the retaliation, for instance, in Canada, them taking all the United States liquors off of the shelves, those are petty little things that are not going to, really hit back at the United States that badly. So I think that it's time for everyone to, kind of put on their big boy pants and get to work and figure out how to make it so it's more fair for the United States to trade internationally. Yeah, the stock market looks like it's going to fall about 1,200 points at the opening, which percentage-wise is not a huge number, but it's definitely reflective on the uncertainty. And that's what Wall Street doesn't like, is uncertainty on how everything is going to play out. Once there's certainty, you'll see the stock market, basically get a lot more strong and a lot sound. And that's my world, and I'm not concerned about that at all. I think, again, as I started off, you have to take the long-term perspective, not the short-term. In the short run, people are going to react emotionally, but in the long run, people are going to look at numbers and really figure out what the true impact of these tariffs are. And in the long run, the hope is for the United States that we get manufacturing back here as soon as possible, so we don't have to import stuff from overseas.